Winning Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival, Koji Yakusho stars in Wim Wenders' newest film, Perfect Days. Going in, I knew nothing about this movie, but I left the theater a truly changed person. Very few films nowadays truly submerge themselves in the beauty of subtlety, but Perfect Days is such a simple story that through this rinse and repeat process still expresses the complex nature of life. I actually got to see this movie a few months ago at the New York Film Festival, yet today when I sit down to talk about it, I feel the same way I did stepping out of the theater. If you guys saw my top 10 favorite movies of 2023, you'll know that this made the list, and though I haven't gotten to talk about it much, I have a lot to say about this movie that truly changed my life. Before we get all of my thoughts on Perfect Days, if you've seen or want to check it out, let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. But without wasting any more time, let's get into it. I have to start off by talking about the story. I know I slightly mentioned it before, but this story is as basic as it gets, but in a good way. I think if they added any more elements to this film, it would have been over convoluted and wouldn't serve purposefully in regards to the themes that they're trying to tell us. Perfect Days is about a toilet cleaner in Tokyo who has a structured and simple routine where he's in love with music, books, and photography. Though this is a simple story, we get to see him go through some encounters that help him and us as an audience find the beauty in the world in very simple ways. The way I think about it is, yes, this story follows a simple routine, but within that routine, I really like the fact that they limit the amount of characters, the amount of different elements that are pressuring in on our main character. My favorite thing is honestly the fact that there are like 2-3 other characters in this film, and obviously none of them are nearly as prominent as our lead, but they fill in just enough gaps around the lead character to make you at least know that this world isn't just about him, but rather the effects outside of him, the effects that things outside of him actually have on him. Speaking of the lead character, I have to talk about this performance because it is honestly one of the most underrated performances of all time in my opinion, just in regards to general discourse. I genuinely think this is one of my favorite performances I've ever seen in a theater ever. I think due to its lack of a wide release, Koji Takusho's performance is just swept under the rug. He obviously won Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival this past year, but I think it's just such a simple performance. He gets like one long shot at the end of the movie that lets him go absolutely insane and like go through, all of the different stages of emotion, and that works really well. But for most of the runtime, this story is just about him existing, and you really do believe it. There's moments of him by himself, just waking up with an alarm clock going off, without an alarm clock going off. There's a bunch of smaller story things that I just don't want to spoil for you guys, because in those moments, you don't necessarily need everything spelled out for you because you just see it on Koji Yakusho's face. You just see this theme or this idea that doesn't need to be spelled out. The story lets him exist, and that in and of itself is very entertaining. Him existing brings this, weird to say, but existential ability to the entire story. You see this one character going through the most simplistic routine, but through every facial expression that the lead gives us, we understand why it's essential to the story. Because you're probably wondering why this section is called A New Day. It's because I actually read this article that was an interview with the director, Wim Wenders, and he said that repetition as such, if you live it as repetition, you become a victim of it. And I genuinely think that quotation is the perfect synopsis for this film, because every single time it's a new day in this movie, and there are a lot of them, you don't feel this dread. I feel as if I was genuinely living this life, I sadly would be full of dread. I don't think that it is something that I could possibly do and find the good in. I noticed that every single time this character wakes up, it's not that he's dreading a new day. It's not that he's dreading going to clean these toilets. It's not that he's dreading to take the same picture in the same park or put the same cassette into his car. It's not that. It's that he's excited to do these things again. He's very excited that he has this life and that he's able to live another day with this life, even though to many of us, this life wouldn't seem like anything of importance. To many, this life feels stale, but I love that this film focuses on the beauty of simplicity. I know I keep repeating the word simple, but that's just what this movie is. And whether you want to admit it or not, a lot of us have this idea that we need to be doing the most things possible, but this movie proves the exact opposite of that. And I'm someone that just loves to keep busy, but this movie makes me not want to do that. This movie has genuinely changed the way that I perceive the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year, the basically entire rest of my life. Kind of getting away from thematic qualities, I guess, I do want to talk about the cinematography because it is pretty simple. This film is in a 1:3:3:1 aspect ratio, and it uses it brilliantly. I mean, so many films just do it for shits and gigs, and it's very, very annoying. But here, and I know this might sound crazy and I might sound batshit insane, but it immersed me enough into this very colorful, well shot, and honestly appealing world. But whenever you have these simple things, and like I had mentioned before, things that I might not necessarily find to be the perfect life, I was able to come out of the movie a little bit due to the aspect ratio and compare it to my own life, compare it to things I was feeling in that moment, and then instantly be teleported right back into this world. And I know every director and filmmaker is like, I want you to be in the movie, but for me, why this movie works so well is because I was able to connect things with my personal life and bring it into what this movie was telling me. On top of that, a decent story chunk of this film does focus on photography, because that's what the main character likes to do. That's what's in his routine. And there's a visual element that comes with that breaks the 1:3:3 aspect ratio. It breaks the color scheme that's used. It goes completely black and white, and the shot selection is so weird. It's a little bit more abstract than anything else we see in this film, yet it works, and it keeps you so immersed into the film, which if I feel like the story didn't work in that regard, then it would completely take me out of it. But the final thing I want to talk about is the score, and I only want to mention it because I actually didn't think about it for the longest time. It's a very repetitive and simple yet effective score. It's not one that you're gonna blast on repeat like Oppenheimer. The way I think about it is, at the end of this film, there's a scene where two characters are playing shadow tag, and that moment, along with what it means in the story, along with what it means for the characters, and the way that the score is utilized there, made me start sobbing. Like, the whole movie I was like, yes, like this is a very personal movie without ever making me cry, and I was like, oh yeah, like this is amazing. And that moment really just shifted my perspective on the entire film, because it's something so simple. It's something that like the rest of the press screening crowd was just laughing at. I felt like people found it amusing, and obviously I found it amusing. I found it sweet. I found it very heartfelt. But for me, it also kind of just felt like it made me just think about like small moments in time. And though this movie is so focused on perfect days, you know, this repetitive structure of life, there's these little moments that aren't structured. They're so spontaneous. And those final moments of the film really, really made me feel that. But guys, that wraps up my thoughts on Wim Wenders' Perfect Days. I don't have an excruciating amount of things to say about this film just because it is such a personal story, and I 100% recommend everyone to go watch this film. I promise you, it'll change your outlook on life, at least in some fashion. Overall, I'm giving Wim Wenders' Perfect Days a 9 out of 10. Again, this is one of my favorite films of last year, and I'm so excited for it to get a wider release and more people to see it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.